Going to do a quick walkthrough on some Python programming. May be of little or no interest to most people, but just a couple little things I've learned. I am going to start out this session with a couple of things going on. I have got a VR file open. It has some lines and a couple of symbols and some text in it. I have got the launch window available so that if I want to look at it, I can. And I'm going to have the beginner's VrPython 3 script open so that I can follow along as I go. There's a lot of text in here. Some of it might be a little dated, but I try to keep it generally relevant and at least correct. So what we're going to see in here is things, comment blocks, and so this is a comment block and this is a number 1. This is code block 1, so that when I get to a place in the code and it says code block 1, that's what I'm going to be looking at. The way this works is it is going to call up a prompt and say, you're about to run code block 1, do you want to? Say OK. If you cancel, you're only going to cancel that code block. It's going to continue running the script, and there really isn't any way to get out of the entire script other than just cancel through all of them or forcibly exit VR. Poor programming there, but that's the point. So everything up here is just informational text. It's all explained up there. There's a little function that we define that's explained as well. There's the first code block. So what I am going to do, I can do this in a variety of ways depending on if my Python environment in VR is set up so that I need the py prefix sometimes, and this is an option in VR config. You can turn this off, but I think the default is to require you to say py and then the name of a program. If you have that turned off, then you only need the name of the program. So let's go ahead and start that, and it is going to pop up and say code block 1, say hello. And this one does not ask for permission to run. It just goes ahead and runs. So code block 1 is right here. So the way I would do this whole script is I would look at the code block. All right, that's this entire bunch of text. I would read what this little window says, and then I would look for any kind of indication of what is going on. So on this one, every single user accessible display is utilized. So there's a dialog box, there's DSP-MSG 0, that's this, DSP-MSG, short MSG 0, short MSG 1, and of course the launch window. So right here where it says hello console, that is coming from the code block that says print hello console, and some text is stored in a variable, and then we print that variable. So really for the rest of the session I'm just going to go through the blocks, but I'm not going to explain every line. That's how it works. So if something is output, it could be output to the command window, it could be output to a dialog box. Not much is going to be output to these anymore, and we'll be following along. So we'll say okay, that one's done. Code block 2, we're going to identify a line. It's going to output to the console. Do I want to execute this block? Go look at code block 2. That's what this is, and all the code that is going to execute things like ID a line, pull some information from it, set some information, replot, print some information. Anytime you just see print something, it's going to go to the launch window. So let's say OK, execute this block. It's going to ask me to identify a line. I'll identify that line, and it did what it was supposed to do. So if it's going on to the next code block, it did what it was supposed to do. I can look at the code and see, well, what was it supposed to do? I can check over in the command window, because most times something is going to go there. And so that is the entirety of code block 2. Next is code block 3. Go down here. Here is the entirety of code block 3. Do we want to run that? Let's see what it's going to do. It's going to identify a symbol, display some information in a dialog. Do I want to execute this block? Okay. So let's go ahead and ID a symbol. This time, as it said, it's going to identify the symbol. It's going to print some information in a dialog. So we see how that happens over here. Okay. Code block 4. This will identify multiple lines. The following routine will go on asking for lines until you hit end. It just places an elevation at the end of the point. So let's go down to code block 4. Execute that. Sure, why not? And so we'll identify a couple of lines, and like it said, it is going to pull the elevation of the last point on the line. It's going to print that on the screen. It's going to keep going on until I say end. So that's kind of a loop over identified features, and that was code block 4. So if I want to see how to identify things, pull information, display information on the graphics screen without saving it. And then there is a discussion on text formatting. In Python, text formatting, there's an old method and a new method. As far as I can tell, the old method is not going to be deprecated. It is very C-like, very familiar. If you've done any C programming, that's what I started out using. Then I switched over to the new method. That's what I use now. And I just explained that with one line down here saying, well, if you want to use the new one, this is how it works. That's code block 4. And there is some explanation of text formatting, string formatting in there. Next, we're going to go on to code block 5. What are we going to do here? We're going to create and store a new entity. Execute this block. Yeah, okay. You're about to create and store a line. If you continue, you'll be asked to digitize a location. Continue. That's the point. Let's just digitize a location. This is just following the mouse cursor, and wherever I stop and click, it did something. What did it do? Well, it just put a little box. A line, created a new line, made it 100 on each side, and digitized it and stored it. So that's code block 5. Code block 6. Looping over all symbols. Execute this block. So it's gonna loop over every symbol in the file. Once I go through every symbol, I could make tests for, is it in a particular layer? Is it a particular graphic pointer? Then I could do actions to each point based on those texts. But let's go ahead and see. Check the console window, then say OK. Well, so what it did was it looped over every symbol, and all it did was load up that symbol and then print some of the information about that symbol. In this case, a symbol count, the layer it's in, and then the XYZ. The XYZ comes back as a list. That's a list is a concept in Python that is interesting and important. So at some point you'll want to get used to what lists are. But anyway, so yes, we check the console window, we see what it did, and we say OK. Next one is code block 7. Interact with the graphics window. Execute this block. This is a weird one because this grabs, okay, so this is the graphics window. It grabs the corners, it creates a line, it creates a symbol in the center, it does all those things. For some reason that I have not investigated, even though right here in the script it says do these things. Because I have not given this window focus, and don't do any further moving around in here, it will not do that immediately. I haven't really tracked down exactly how that works, but I do know that at some point in the future a symbol is going to pop up in the middle of the screen, and it's going to be one of my north arrows in a particular layer, all set in here. So code block 7, it is not going to do anything immediately. So now I'm curious. Let's just go ahead and top this window. And I can't because I'm in the middle of a script. And I guess that's what it is. I can't interact or do anything with the window. I can't even give it focus while I'm in the middle of a script. So let's go to code block 8. This is show me how to use prompt boxes, an excellent way to get data out of into a script. So let's go ahead and execute this code block 8. Alright, so I'm looking at that over there. I could read through here every line, see what every line does. I could change them, I could try them, but let's just go ahead and say, okay, this is a prompt box that has asked for an integer, and this function will constrain it to an integer. This one asks for a real number. I can change this to 10.5. I can set a checkbox. I can select line. It defaulted to symbol, but I can select line. The way this text is centered is a bug that popped up in version 7 and only applies to list boxes and only to the last piece of text. But that's the only problem, and otherwise it works fine. And then I'll say OK, and it pulls information out of the list box, or out of the dialog box, and then it prints. So this is a line that does two things at once. It calls the getInteger function, pulls the integer out of the dialog box, and then prints the result of that along with a piece of text that says integer. In this script, I do not do any real text formatting. So you can see here it says print. It is printing two things: a string, a comma, separated by a comma, and then some information. So I'm not really doing any string formatting anywhere else other than in that one code block up above. But anyway, it pulled the information from the dialog box. It printed it to the command window, and now it's ready to go on to block 9. Block 9 is going to build data lists. Execute this block. Lists, tuples, strings, arrays, all things that are really important in Python. You'll want to, if you don't learn anything else about Python, learn those concepts. But what is this going to do? It is going to, it looks like it looped over the file, and I'm just guessing here, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but because I know, it looped over the file, looked at all the entities, pulled out layers that had entities stored on them, because I know in this file entity 184, 106, 184, and 199 actually have something in them, and then it used a dialog box to display that, but it also just through, let's see, somewhere down here it says print a layer list. So there is a list created. That's all this stuff up here. It is a group of 5 items. Each item happens to be an integer, not necessary, but just what it is. It went ahead and used the sort method on that list, and then it printed it, and then it displayed a message box with that information in it. So lists are important, and that's now this one, block 10, it is going to read see, some data out of VrCFG, which is just some objects that VR exposes to read and set configuration. And it's also going to do some file parsing. I have no idea what this is going to do. I'd have to read through it. It's been so long. But it's also going to see version. It pulled the version out of the VrCFG. That's obviously a method. Yeah, so we can see that right here. So it sets a variable. It runs VrCFG, and then it displays a message box, and then it's going to get the pen table name. Alright, and it's going to display the pen table name. This is all stuff coming out of VrCFG. It's going to, looks like, open the pen table, read a bunch of lines out of it, and then print some of the lines. So that's what it did. It opened a file. Alright, so this is an example of how do you open a file, how do you read some data out of it, how do you print that data as you go. It converted something to a list. Alright, so that's important. Looks like it took the ninth element there, converted it to a list, and then print a single thing. Lot of important concepts in there. Again, we're not going through this. This is not a tutorial. It's just how to read this. How to read this script. The next thing is going to be Python code block Python. Straight Python code, including writing a file. All interaction will be with the console window. So I want to have the console window up, and I'm going to say OK. And it looks like I'm going to have to hit continue several times. Ready to run the Python section, hit continue to go on. And this is just straight, pure Python. Has nothing to do with VR. You could get out and open a Python interpreter, and it's going to stop and ask me to hit continue several times, and it's going to do things like append a string to a nested list. Alright, so that's what it does here. Again, strings, lists, tuples, dictionaries, very, very useful. Hit continue. Looping over a range of numbers. Alright, so again, all this code is up here, and you can see the results down here. Takes a sequence. Sequences can be sliced. Concepts that are Python. Yeah, you just need to get a Python tutorial and learn. Strings contain words. Slice a value. So apparently there's a string that says strings contain words, and I'm going to take from the 3rd to the 12th. INGSCONT. So if we looked at there, that's that. Hit continue. So it's slicing up pieces of text. Doing a little bit of math. Let's see, down here probably. Are you looking for exceptions? This is how exceptions work. This works fine, so the exception is never called. This does not work fine, so the exception is called. And it says there's an error. Would normally end the program, but instead it is trapped by the exception, and then this is displayed. And then the very last thing is show version, and did that. And now if I come back over here, you can see as soon as the mouse touches that, remember when we said print that symbol, print that outline around the box, those things were essentially done, but the window couldn't act until the Python script ended. If I was using that in a normal script, that would have happened real time, because it would have just been called in the script. The script would have ended and it would have happened. So this is a very low level, very simple, but very practical and useful introduction to VrPython and some of the capabilities there. Feel free to give me a shout. Contact information is in the script if there are any other questions.